In this special community watchdog report, Nate Morabito found out some government renters may be overstaying their welcome.
This is not what I wanted for my family.
Yet here Brittany DeLargy sits outside the Johnson City Housing Authority with her 3-year-old son and a baby on the way.
You got to do what you got to do when you're a mama and a wife.
With her husband out of a job and her income just $800 a month, her family is behind on rent and will soon have to leave this house. That brings her here to fill out an application for government housing. Meanwhile, people who make much more than her are sleeping easy in a government apartment.
It's very aggravating.
The Johnson City Housing Authority is home to the largest number of households that made the most money last year. 7 took home more than $50,000, and 1 made almost $77,000 last year. The Housing Authority says those people came here, in some cases years ago, looking for help. Thanks to the government's assistance, they've since improved their situation. Now, the executive director thinks some of them are making enough to move out and buy their own home, which would open the door for those who really need a place to stay. Richard McLean believes some of these people are standing in the way of that, maybe even milking the system.
You're not saying that all of them are taking advantage, but you feel pretty confident that some of them are taking advantage.
Possibly some are.
That's why the Housing Authority is raising rates for some of its tenants beginning September 1st.
What you're saying is the government has served its purpose for these higher income people.
Yes, I think so.
They should move out and allow people who do need those facilities to move in.
We presented our findings to Congressman Phil Rowe, who wondered if something needs to change at the federal level.
Get the IG, the Inspector General, to look at the housing all over the country and find out this going on.
The congressman promised action, starting with Congress's Oversight Investigation Subcommittee.
Subsidized housing, that means that somebody's helping pay for your rent. People, as they go up the income ladder, which is a great thing. That means you're a taxpayer and so forth. I think you need to move out of public housing into the private sector.
It is aggravating at times because you know there's people here that make more than enough money.
It's being called a miracle. 3 women kidnapped and held hostage for nearly a decade, free tonight, found alive in the same Cleveland home.
And we were there today when Amanda Berry called her family in Elizabethton for the first time in 10 years. And today, police called her a hero.
And now she is calling the people she loves most to let them know that she is safe.
Nate Morabito was there for that phone call. Nate?
Yeah, it still gives me chills thinking about hearing her voice this morning. Imagine how her family felt when they got that call. They're making arrangements to try and get up to see Amanda as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Amanda's mom, a Cleveland native, died 3 years after she disappeared. But her sister, pictured here with Amanda last night, still lives in Cleveland. There's also a new addition to the family, a family with ties to the Tri-Cities.
Hello.
When Crystal Milton answered the phone, she
Is that Amanda?
Mandy.
Let me speak to her.
and her grandparents couldn't believe
It's so good to hear you.
who was on the other end of the line.
Let me say hi to her. Can you?
After 10 years of waiting, Amanda Berry's grandmother couldn't wait to hear her voice any longer.
Hello?
Amanda.
Yeah, Grandma.
How are you?
I'm fine.
The last time the two talked, Amanda was just 16.
I'm glad to have you back. Oh, I thought you were gone.
Nope, I'm here.
At one time, most of Berry's family lived in Cleveland, but Amanda's dad and grandparents moved back to Elizabethton more than a decade ago.
We always spend our summers together.
Still, the family never lost touch until 2003.
I was up there about a month before she came up missing.
10 long years passed, and hope faded.
I never thought we'd see this day.
But then came a series of phone calls, first to 911,
Help me, I'm Amanda Berry.
and then after her rescue to Tennessee.
And we're happy down here for you.
Thank you so much. I miss everybody. I love you guys so much.
Despite the relief, Berry's family knows her alleged kidnappers stripped away much of her innocence.
The little girl is your baby.
Yeah, she's my daughter.
In fact, she now has a 6-year-old daughter.
Born on Christmas.
Soon,
We got to get together soon.
I know.
all of the family members,
I'm ready to go right now to see her.
new and old, will see each other.
I have a little girl named Christina, and she wants to meet you. I've talked about you all these years.
The unexpected reunion is long overdue.
Miracles do happen.
And perhaps no one is happier about it than Barry's grandmother.
But I love you, honey. Thank God.
I love you too.
I thought about you all this time. I never forgot you.
You can imagine why it was so difficult for her to say goodbye.
She sounds great. She does. She sounds good. Yeah. Thank God.
For Don Turner, it's a lonely walk to his older brother's grave. Every time he returns to Otis's final resting place,
oh, Lord,
he comes empty-handed. Despite his best efforts, Don still doesn't have the answers. He has more questions than ever.
29 years.
All those years ago,
My cousin had called and told me I was been in an accident, meet him at the hospital.
recently, Turner learned the file of his brother's murder at the sheriff's office for years was smaller than the one at his house.
It blows my mind that they'd lose the files.
Not only is your brother killed, the sheriff's department then loses the case file.
Yes, sir.
How does that make you feel?
I just can't understand it. It's just mind-boggling for anybody to be that incompetent.
The case file started just off Interstate 81 near Bluntville, under this bridge.
I come across that bridge at night at 12 o'clock.
Just an hour and a half later,
it was kind of a curiosity thing.
Major Keith Elton, then 32, was driving by when something caught his attention.
The car was sitting just by where we're standing here. Tires could have been on the grass.
Not only was there a car on the side of the road, it looked like the window was rolled down. And it was raining.
Why would anybody at that time of the morning is sitting there when it's starting to rain with the window down?
It turns out a bullet had shattered the window.
I came around, and that's when I found the body in the car,
killing the 40-year-old inside.
I saw a male slumped over towards the passenger side.
After Elton filled out this police report, the case left his hands.
It was something that I continued to think about.
From there, as time passed, so did the case file, in and out of the hands of who knows how many different investigators, under the leadership of 3 sheriffs.
The time passage has been just so detrimental to this case.
Then, in 2009, Joey Strickler took over the case. The evidence was all still there, but the case file...
It was probably the size just of a regular folder.
...was practically non-existent.
For a homicide investigation, it was ridiculous. Because most case files are, in homicide cases, end up being boxes.
The sheriff's office suspects a previous administration either failed to document developments in the case or misplaced the files altogether.
So someone messed up?
Possibly. It was hard putting the case back together. There was a lot of things that could not be located.
Some of that information died when those involved passed away. Strickler had no choice but to start from scratch. He interviewed witnesses all over again and reconstructed the case.
We started basically reinventing the wheel.
In the time since, he says the current administration has kept this case a priority.
To the sheriff's office's credit, in recent years, investigators have featured this cold case on our Monday's Most Wanted segment, once in 2009 and again in 2011.
Today, he says the department has 2 or 3 people of interest.
I believe someone could, if they would, come forward and talk to us. And it would be the glue that would put it all together.
And I think you know who that person is.
I have a strong belief.
For this investigator, the case is personal.
I wish that I could get the guy.
Mostly because he knows how much pain Turner's brother is going through.
I've seen his heart and his love for his family, and that drives you even more.
But for lose all the information, that's uncalled for.
Turner doesn't know who's to blame.
Somebody ought to be held accountable.
But he knows the mistake couldn't have helped his brother's case.
Somebody knows, and it'll come out sometime, I believe.
All he can do now is keep the faith, a faith shaken by law enforcement, but one that can be restored by investigators, too.
As long as there's a breath in me, there's hope.
Nate Morabito, News Channel 11, in your corner.